Hi. Looks like we're live on YouTube. I'm getting a little better. I reached it this time anyway. The dilemma here is not many people are going to be joining us. I haven't compiled a lot of subscribers yet, and I haven't convinced them to come over here and watch me versus maybe all of that stuff that's going on in America. All the basically complaining, and I don't know. I spent a lot of years in the military and special forces, and I've and some of these third world countries, with dictators who are narcissists, which our president is, or let me rephrase that. I'm not a psychologist, but he certainly portrays a lot of the symptoms. And you don't have to be a psychologist to see the symptoms. So anyway, I don't know that we'll have a lot of people on here, which is really a shame because the information I'm presenting is how you can be a better leader. The information you're seeing on the other side is how bad a leader can be when they don't follow these things I'm telling you here, which I find really kind of interesting. And I don't know. It just doesn't seem we seem to be more focused on how miserable can we be. I don't know how many podcasts I've watched this week. I've really stopped watching them now, primarily because they all do the same thing. They all just repeat what every other podcast is saying, which is basically what the news is saying. Well, not quite as in depth or detailed as the podcasters are. But we're really just talking about the misery. We're showing the misery over and over. Nobody is doing anything about the misery. And I'm not advocating violence, but nobody's taking the opportunity to figure out how to deal with this situation. So the one thing I do know about those third world country leaders, because I pushed on some of them pretty hard when we were in the military, they push back harder. They try to push back harder. So about the only way the only thing they really understand is when you overpower them, when you make them fear for their life more than they're making you fear for your life. That's what I know about third world countries. I'm not saying that here. I'm just saying third world countries. Okay, enough about that. What are we talking about today? This is like our third Q&A session, and nobody's joining us. But I like to do them because when I do them, we have some data, we have some information that's available that people can, if they ever do subscribe, they can go way back and start at the beginning. And what these videos do is, because I tend to do some summarizing, they talk a little bit more about it. And I try to add a little more to it during the videos than we do during the actual newsletter we send out every week. Just to recap, every Tuesday, you're going to get a newsletter on a topic about leadership and interpersonal communication, or what I call leadership communication. And then Thursday evening at 8 p.m. now, I stopped doing it Saturday mornings because nobody was watching then either, but at least somebody had the courtesy to say, hey, this is a horrible time. This isn't the time to do it. Which I'm probably right. I'm retired, so I have a little more free time on my hands, and Saturdays don't mean as much as they used to me. And I kind of forgot that. So I'm trying to do these for about an hour between 8 and 9 p.m. So what we do is we're taking a topic about leadership, and we're trying to talk about it in terms of communication. Because I'm very convinced after 45 years of dealing with it and helping companies improve and seeing what was wrong with them, I'm totally convinced that the vast majority of times I was dealing with leaders, it was because they weren't communicating effectively when they were trying to apply their communication skills. For example, they knew how to handle a conflict. Maybe they knew how to identify the conflict, decide what kind of conflict it was, what type of approach to use towards that conflict and everything. They may have had a class on conflict management and learned that in that class. And they understand that. The problem is their communication style was not conducive to doing what the instructors were telling them, because they told them about conflict. They just didn't tell them about how to go present this process in a way. And it's normally because the instructors haven't been trained in interpersonal communication either. So, I mean, I've had professors, the only professors I knew that taught about interpersonal communication were in the communication department where I got my graduate's degrees from. The rest of the university had no idea what interpersonal communication was. So anyway, that's sort of what we're going to cover this evening. What I want to do is, typically what I do is I'm going to do a brief overview, try to be as brief as I can, and then I'll take any questions there. This time we did get a couple of questions that came through the email, so I will try to paste those in here and put them up when the time comes, and we'll address those couple of questions. It's the way you can do this. If you don't want to come in and subscribe, but you want to get some information, or you're not going to get it unless you subscribe. But if you subscribe and you don't want to attend any of these sessions or whatever and ask a question, you can write me a question in comments of the video here that you watch, or you can write me some questions about through my email, and I will put them up here on the screen like we're going to do tonight, and then we'll talk about them a little bit, and hopefully they'll be helpful to you. The best way to do it is for us to have a dialogue of some sort, the best we can, through a chat, or somebody come on the air with me and talk about a situation you had. We could talk about that situation 45 minutes and probably learn more than we could 5 hours of doing chats and questions and things like that. So I'm open to doing that too. If anybody wants to join me, just let me know and we'll come on here. I'm not going to spend a lot of money, and I'm not going to put a lot of energy behind trying to convince people to subscribe, because if you don't want to know this information, then you don't want to know it. People who want to know it hopefully will find it. Somebody will put it out there and say, hey, I spent some time with Vic on the air last night, and it was really beneficial to me. I could actually go back and ask my boss a question. That's one of the things we'll talk about later. So let's go ahead and get on over to the segment where we're going to look at feedback. And is that important? Oh my God. The absence of feedback is when you realize how important it is to you, because you don't have it. And when you don't have it, you're just kind of wandering around guessing about things. And how comfortable is that for you as an employee when you're getting instructions in say, a text message, but you only have like 20 lines or 80 characters or something to say it, and so the boss tries to shorten it up to fit in there, and he doesn't put any of the detail, any of the expectation. You don't have an opportunity once you get it to ask him what he thinks about it at all. How frustrating must be for people. Now maybe there are times where you can do that, so somebody can do that, and you can get that information, and you, because of your expertise, know what to do with it. That's great. But there's so many times, and particularly with new people or a new situation or a new project or some sort of new issue you're dealing with that you haven't had time to talk through in a meeting or whatever. and if you're not getting the information, you're not getting the feedback. So that's what we're going to talk to a little bit right here. Let's talk a little bit about some of that kind of information. Let me get up here and get into my slide presentation. There we go. Now, the issue is the absence of feedback. So I would say to you this, that's as important as bad feedback. We spend a lot of time teaching people when they go to, I've seen people go to leadership courses, and I've sat in on a lot of them. And I've listened to professors teach them when I was sort of an adjunct professor doing some work, and a lot of times they would ask me to come in and see how close they are to reality, because I was a consultant out there doing what they were teaching while they were teaching me about it. Go grab that one. It's the absence of feedback is singularly the biggest things that employees told me. Now, I'm 45 years, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. 45 years of working. What I normally did when I went into an organization before I did anything about trying to help them, I assessed the organization against a set of criteria that we would call best practices. And so when I got that information back, most of it was computer-based questionnaires and things like that. But when I got those questions back, my model that I created for myself for consulting was to come back and validate some of that through focus groups and individual interviews. And so I probably have done tens of thousands of those employees over the course of 45 years, where I've sat down with them one-on-one and talked with them. Because, I mean, it's not a long interview. It's not an hour-long interview. It's just briefly touching on some points to make sure that what I got in the survey data kind of was representative of what they were telling me. When I connected those two, I felt very comfortable to go to the executives and tell them, here's what's going on. But what I found interesting over those tens of thousands of employees was the thing that they always said they would like their leader to do better. That was one of the questions. After all of this, if there was one thing you could have your leader do better, what would that be? Communication. Well, what do you mean by that? And we got into it, and as we got into it, that's where I began to tie interpersonal communication, because that's what they were talking about. They weren't talking about general communication, because that could be mass media, it could be politics, it could be anything you want to attach to it. This was about them talking to them talking to each other, where they were trying to connect and have a relationship that delivered meaningful progress and productivity. So when they say communication, probably I would say well over 60% of the time, maybe even 70% of the time, when they were giving those behaviors describing communication, I never saw them. They never came down. They never talked to me. I said, well, how'd you get all your directives and instructions? I got them through email, or I got them through text messages, but I never talked to them. So that's what we call a synchronous communication, and it's normally one-way communication. So you don't have a chance to find out whether what you're thinking is what the boss really wants. And that doesn't leave employees in a very comfortable position. And out of all of the troubles that went on in leadership, probably those were the most pronounced. And they were consistent across all kinds of industries, all kinds of companies, all kinds of leaders, all kinds of ages, all kinds of races. I mean, I was doing work in Australia and China and South America and Europe and all over too. Same thing. It was a pretty consistent pattern because there was this certain concept about leadership that we've been teaching for 40 years, and we've never changed it. And consequently, the engagement level of our employees and the satisfaction with their leadership hasn't changed for 4 decades. I say hasn't changed on the whole, on the general trend. I mean, I've had a lot of success in turning leaders around and getting them pointed in the right direction. Had a lot of successful individuals. But me, I mean, even after 45 years dealing with hundreds of companies, I only probably touched a few hundred employees out of the millions that are out there. Even leaders, the millions of leaders are out there. So the absence of feedback was one of those things that was really very, very prominent. And then I'm reading a Gallup survey about employee engagement again and frustration with that. And in that, they cited one of the primary issues and one of the most important issues is feedback. The way they get feedback, and then what they didn't discuss, and I bet you we could have gone back and asked some of those employees questions behind those surveys and said, what do you mean by communication? What do you mean by feedback? They probably would have said, I just never get it, any of it. I never have a chance to get it, and I don't have a chance to give it. And which one of them makes you feel awful, makes you trying to figure out what's going on. The other one makes you feel like you're not valued. So both of those things doubled up make a pretty miserable employee. And so anyway, this is part of what we want to talk about. What's going on with the absence of feedback? What do we mean by that? So it's really about inconsistent or absolutely no feedback whatsoever. And in today's leadership, there's just a vacuum of it. There's a vacuum. I mean, I'm watching it with Donald Trump. I mean, a lot of people look at him and they're really analyzing him as almost an evil. I guess if it was in biblical terms, he would be the Antichrist almost. And they all, they're satisfied. And what he's doing and stuff is horrible. But I'm looking at it from a standpoint of a professional, a leader. What's missing here? One of the things is he doesn't take feedback. Well, in fact, if you get the wrong feedback, you get punished. But he doesn't want feedback. He doesn't want feedback. He doesn't process it. It's not part of who he is. And there are a lot of leaders out there like that in businesses, and department heads and managers who they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to have to deal with any kind of feedback that comes their way. So it's pretty prevalent out there in the business world, and I can attest to that after 45 years of being in a lot of businesses, a lot of different industries, a lot of different sizes, a lot of different people. I can attest to you this is one of the biggest issues out there. And so Gallup pretty much has this hit on the head. That little section they did, I'm not sure they even understand how important that little few paragraphs were they put in that basic report. I think I put it in, and I'll also attach a link to that article for you to read, because it's a really good article for you to read about employee engagement. So everyday missed opportunities. This is where your mistakes happen. This is where misinformation, disinformation, and you leave people to make their own kind of decisions. And like we heard in earlier ones, they always move to a more negative thought process, or they hesitate, they freeze on you, and they don't do anything. I'm not going to do anything because in case if I do it, it's wrong because I have no idea what the hell he wants out of this. He didn't explain it well. So the behaviors manifest themselves sometimes also in so missed opportunities or attitudes or work performance and attitudes and things like that. But they also come in unusual behaviors like absences or somebody who's a really straight on high performing person 9 months out of the year, all of a sudden they're late to work a little more frequently, or they're absent altogether, or their work product begins to really take a nosedive, highly unusual. That's feedback. But if you as a leader can't see that, if you can't recognize it, then it's missed opportunity. It's missed opportunity because you're going to find that person's going down on a real difficult kind of path, and maybe they have something at home, at work, but their behavior changed, and you miss that. And so gathering feedback isn't just talking with an employee and then reciting something that tells them that you're listening. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's normally what's taught when you go. You get an hour and a half or 2 hours of feedback, and what you take away from it every time when I ask somebody, what'd you get out of that? And they come back and they go, well, you want to make sure you say something that person said back to them in a question so they know you were listening. And I said, that's what you got out of it? And they go, yeah, they want to know that you were listening. But that's how you are reading that you want to deal with feedback. You just have to recite a couple of words, and that's okay. You can be thinking about anything else, catch 3 words, and give them those 3 words and says, did you say this? And they go, yeah. I go, okay. See, I was listening. No, you weren't. Missed opportunities are all over the place. So the other thing is leaders tend to think of feedback as a major planned event. I think when we teach feedback, we teach it like that's performance appraisals, feedback. When you got to give employee criticism or critique, or actually hope it should be critique, never criticism, but you got to critique an employee, so that's feedback. So those are the times you do it, and then you don't have to worry about it except for those kinds of times where you're given specific direction or critiquing the employee or whatever. And when you do that, you just need to be very specific about it and make sure you say something that they said to you so they know you were listening to them. I get really frustrated with that kind of instruction. Okay. I want you to think of interpersonal communication and specifically interpersonal, and you'll see why as we talk about it more and more. It's like communication's like the lifeblood is to your body, like blood is to your body. It's the life pulsing system to your body. So when the lifeblood is kind of constricted or something goes wrong with it processing and flowing properly, and it's constricted or coagulates or whatever happens with blood and it goes into your body, it creates problems. It creates up to the point of death. If it's not flowing properly, and you don't know it, I mean, they could be flowing in there like crazy, but unless you go in and assess it every now and then, you might not find out something's wrong. You may feel fine until bam, that thing hits and you're dead, or you're pretty well disabled for the rest of your life. That could have been prevented had you had the signals, had you paid attention to the signals, if you knew them. A lot of people resist knowing them because they're fearful of it and they don't want to know it. But, you're probably going to be more afraid after something happens to you. So this idea of recognizing that within an organization, all the leaders that are down throughout that organization, all the employees that are in that organization, the thing that really connects them and keeps it going and keeps the flow working well and keeps you healthy and keeps you in a productive versus a toxic or a healthy versus a toxic culture is the communication that you have going down into the organization. Very, like we talked earlier, these things are connecting here. We're talking about, by the way, you want to have clear, concise. You don't want vague or uncertain. You want it to be transparent and honest and open. That kind of communication coming down into the organization makes the employee understand what's going on clearly. And then the question is, how do you know that as a leader? And this is where feedback comes in. So that information coming back up to you has to come up the same way. It has to be concise and clear and not vague. And it has to be coming transparently, whether it's good or bad. It's got to come up correctly and in the quantity of the way you want it. And that feedback then needs to be able to be recognized and understood and handled correctly. So, if anything that blocks that, anything that gets in the way of that, you don't have good feedback coming back up, your messages aren't clear, you're trying to hide things or use information to position something the wrong way for the wrong reasons. All of that just creates a block in organizations working effectively. So I'm just trying to help you understand that this lifeblood, this system operates like your body does. And anything you do to block it, any knowledge that you fail to have about it, is going to impact you the same way about your knowledge about your body. The more you know about your body, the healthier you're going to become. So feedback is often taught basically from dealing with negative situations, but most feedback courses fail because feedback plays in the role that feedback plays in normal discussions isn't really discussed very much. You're not taught that in every conversation you have feedback. Now, maybe you don't recognize it, maybe you don't understand it, maybe you don't know how to use it, maybe you don't know how to optimize it either. But it's in every conversation, every single conversation you have, there's feedback. And you need to understand and learn about how it impacts your whole overall conversation as you go through it. So in most leadership development courses, the full scope of feedback is just not even taught. It's not even coming close to teaching what you need to learn to be really effective at using feedback and the power that you can bring and the how much it can help you achieve what you want to achieve is just not talked about or discussed in terms of why feedback is important for you. So why does it matter? One, without it, there is no growth. Engagement's just like they were pointing out in Gallup. Engagement's low. Satisfaction for with leadership is low. Leadership satisfaction with employees is low also. It's also not very good. So there's no relationship. There's no relationship, and that's pretty evident when you talk to people. It's pretty evident when you see executives fighting with employees about do they come in the office, do they not come in the office? Do they are they treated right or are they not treated right? My God, you just saw on live TV the President of the United States giving the finger to a national union up in Michigan, an auto union, because an employee said something he didn't like. Now, if you're a leader and you can't get past that, you're in the wrong role, and Donald Trump's in the wrong role. But that's an example. You'll get stagnation. You will not get growth. You will not get continued significant growth. Now, you can grow a company without that kind of environment. You're just not going to get as good a company as if you had that relationship established. Employees feel undervalued when their efforts aren't acknowledged. If you provide all your direction via email, text messages, your employees never see you, okay? You don't know, as they're learning and growing, you don't get a chance to see how much they have to offer you. And because you don't talk to them, you don't ever see it. That absence is a big word in a lot of leadership issues I've dealt with. You don't get a chance to see how good your people really are. Consequently, a lot of the instruction you're giving them are going to be talking about what we're going to be talking about next week. They become micromanagement. They become micromanagement because you don't know enough about your people to know what they can do. And so that's going to be a good one to talk about next week too, that a lot of people are going to miss because they're not subscribing. They don't want to participate. Okay, that's fine. Maybe when they get the word, or somebody happens to show one of these videos to them, okay, and they go, oh my God, I didn't realize that much about feedback. I guess I better learn something more about it. Yeah, I guess maybe you should. Maybe your employees appreciate you a lot more. In fact, maybe you do a lot less work yourself because your employees can do the work. You just didn't know it. Okay, these are the things. So disengagement happens. That's what the Gallup article was all about, and why they put in there that segment that feedback is the most important thing that is impacting employee engagement out there. And they're talking about thousands. They're talking about, like I was, 15, 20,000. I mean, these groups have been doing this for 40 years too, and they have thousands and thousands of employees they've surveyed. So it's not like what they're saying should be taken lightly. It should be, you should lock onto them and believe what they're saying and start asking yourself, hey, am I somebody that gives pretty good feedback? Or how much do I really know about my employees? Ask that question. Also, you get inconsistent messages lead to a variety of interpretation of success or what the expectation is. A lot of times when I'd come in and do vision, mission, goals, and objectives for companies, I would sit down. I'd set a board down. I set a board down of a major multi-billion-dollar organization, international organization. I said, I have one question. I want each of you to write down one sentence that explains what the answer to this question, and do not talk to anybody else. Just write your answer down. I will collect it. I will collect it for you, and we'll talk about it. And the question was, why are you in business? Why are you in this business? This is a more precise question I had. Why are you in this business? And I got all kinds of varied answers, from just to make profit to I want to help. And it was like not consistent across the board. And I said, you guys don't even have any consistency amongst yourself. How the fuck do you think you're going to get consistency with thousands of people out there? And it struck them, and I unfortunately I use that word too, but they are used to hearing in those meetings. You may not be out there, but I apologize. But it was appropriate because it was so powerful. It just said, so much about the confusion, the inconsistency, and it comes from the fact they don't know anything about the people that are working for them. They had no idea about turnover levels or engagement levels or none of that was taken seriously. That's for HR to handle. We don't want to handle that. Hell, that is your job. Your company consists of getting the growth based on the financial moves that you make, but it goes nowhere if every one of those employees today, this instant, all of them, 100,000 of them in Amazon walked off the job for 2 days, would basically tank Amazon. Would tank Amazon. They couldn't get any of their products out. They couldn't get anything going. They couldn't hire enough people fast enough to deliver the millions and billions of dollars they would lose over a one-day walkout. A good, well-organized, everybody walks out, nobody can come in the gate and deliver. That is an interesting issue right there. So when I say the heart of the matter, I'm talking about the lifeblood system. Empathy is really a big portion of this. Emotional intelligence is what we use to bridge the gap and feedback. It's the important aspects that feedback get, your ability to understand and empathize and be compassionate and be able to see where things are and where your people are in relation to all of the things that you're expecting of them. So to solve this, a leader must lean heavily on emotional intelligence. We'll talk about emotional intelligence a pretty good bit along the way. But if you have any questions, you just want to talk to me about it, you're welcome to pick up the phone and schedule an hour with me, and I'll kind of go over to you why this is important. It's also, it permeates I think I have 4 or 5 books out. Well, I have probably 3 books on interpersonal communication, one on a leadership paradigm change where we just need to change leadership altogether, the whole concept of it. And then three books on focus primarily on interpersonal communication, and each of those books has a workbook, and then I have 2 additional workbooks, and all of those are designed to teach you, not just for you to read it, but for you to get out there and practice it and look at it and really understand it and ask questions about it and things like that. Those workbooks take you through those exercises. They appear simple. They're deceptively simple things to do. But if you do them correctly, they're hard to do, and you're going to get smacked in the face with a lot of great information. So a critical component is the ability to recognize and interpret nonverbal cues that relate to emotional behaviors in your employees. So that's a very important part of all of this. Emphasize and tailor your feedback to the needs of your employees and help them regulate the discussion and encourage them and get involved and learning what you're learning here. In other words, this is something I would take all the way down to the employee level. We would just take a different approach at how you're looking at it, because they're looking at it at how to connect with you to get what you want, to make sure they're getting what you are telling them and doing it the way you want them to do it. And that you appreciate watching them grow while you're doing it. You know, that you see that in them. So they can see that. If you had great feedback, you would be meeting with them regularly, and what you used to give them in very specific and detailed instructions, soon you're going to be giving them in different instructions. So when you synchronize, and we talk about synchronizing employees, is when you're spending time with them or you're interacting with anybody, you're synchronizing. You're trying to get on the same emotional wavelength they are. Now, what you don't know is your brain gives you the possibility to talk to someone who's extremely frustrated and angry and upset, very, very to the point of crying and really upset, and you have the capacity to Connect with them in a way that you actually begin to feel those same emotions. Your body would react the same way. Your blood pressure would go up. Your hormones would go crazy. You're feeling the same thing they're feeling. What your brain has the capacity to do, though, since you're the one that's conducting this discussion, providing information, getting feedback, providing information, in a hostile kind of way, your brain has the ability to say, this isn't where I want this person. I want them to become. So I need to now regulate that behavior I'm feeling and try to get them to calm down. So maybe I start talking in a more calm and peaceful voice and pausing a little bit and giving some pregnant pauses and talking and leaning forward and being a little warmer in the conversation. I got you. I know where I feel, but it's not helping you. I want you to calm down so we can get to where I can help you. And you can do that as a leader. But you have to know that's part of feedback. And we don't teach that. We don't teach you how to do that. That's in a whole different separate program over here called emotional intelligence. So we're not connecting them. When I say interpersonal communication, interpersonal is emotional intelligence behavior. Communication is the processes that you can make that happen while you're connecting and regulate it. But you would never get that unless you take my course, I guess, because I'm not getting it in any other courses I look at where you're connecting all of this stuff to where it becomes useful to you. So when you're talking with someone, whether it's your wife or your child or your subordinate, and you're going through this conversation, or you take it, you all of a sudden can say to yourself, oh yeah, I remember, oh yeah, I'm connecting here. I want to synchronize with this person. Okay, I can see that. I can see you're really upset and that bothering you. Now, let's talk about it a little more. Keep talking about it, but I'm going to take my voice and I'm going to bring it down. Okay, that's good. Keep talking about it. Pretty soon they're talking like I am. And you're there and you're going, I see you. I'm so sorry. I said that the wrong way. I really put it the wrong way. And I can see how mad it made you and how upset you were. And I can see that you thought I thought some bad things about you that weren't really true. These are the things you get when you start connecting, mastering the communication process with, got to get some coffee here, with emotional intelligence and other aspects that we're going to be talking about, nonverbal communication and behavior. So all of this stuff is part of what we discussed with you here. It's a part of it. If you want to get the in-depth aspects out of it, you need to buy those books and read them. They're electronic books. They don't take forever. But you need to make sure you take the workbook and work the workbook through with what you're reading. If you have any questions about how to make that work for you, get online, schedule an appointment. I will spend an hour helping you learn how to do this. You can literally do this by watching certain TV programs. Like the one I watch a lot is the ones that are filled with really raw emotion, like The Landman. That's a lot of human emotion. It's a lot more than action. Okay, all the action stuff. It's a lot of it that's attracting people to those things. And the other one is the one that have about forest firefighters. There's a lot of human emotion in that. Probably over 50% of the show is about the interaction of those people, and the rest of it's about firefighting or drilling oil. Drilling oil is really kind of boring when you really get down to it. But it's that interaction of those people. That kind of culture, that environment. You can literally take these programs, read the books, take the workbook, look at the instructions in the workbook, observe a conflict situation Well, take a conflict situation between, I can't remember the guy that plays the landman, the head guy there, between him and, say, the guy he was negotiating with finances, or the head of the oil, whose husband died. She now heads an oil company, and the interaction that they have. Okay? Then talk about it in terms of feedback. Talk about it in terms of nonverbal behavior, because all of those actors are getting into the mode, and the way they get into the mode is to be explicit, and they demonstrate it a lot through their actions and behaviors, and so you get a chance to actually practice it watching TV. You can just have your notebook out, have your little wine and cheese or whatever, and watching your show, and say, oh yeah, let me stop that and go back and rewind it, and let me look at that from what she said to him relative to what did he do to cause her to say that, or what did she do to cause him to do that. You can do that, because these shows are aimed at that. They really are. They got so much of that in them. I mean, that's how they go about it. So here's three things you can do tomorrow if you want to start practicing improving your feedback. Preparation with purpose. Before speaking, before even having a discussion, define the specific behavior and the impact it's going to have on somebody, the desired impact, and then see whether or not that is actually happening. Be aware as you're doing it whether that is happening or not, and learn how to do that by understanding all the nonverbal things that you have in your toolkit that help you do that. And there's a lot of them out there. It's more than just your eyes and your face and whether you cross your arms. There's time, there's proximity, there's haptics or touch, and there's the eyes, the kinesics, the eyes and the body postures. There's 4 or 5 things that are key that will tell you a lot about the nonverbal cues, where you hold your meetings, when you hold them, all that kind of stuff is as important as how you hold it. Okay? They're part of how you hold it. Avoid generalizations, as stated in this book. One of these books called The Power of Effective Interpersonal Communication. They are at the bottom of the newsletter you got, and they are linked to where you can buy them. Clear communication is a bridge between confusion and clarity. I can't explain it. And this is where divorces happen. This is where people get fired. This is where mistakes are made, some of them disastrous mistakes. It is taking a snapshot of our Congress, the executive branch, the Supreme Court judges, the congressional branch, everybody that works in it, and looking at how are they talking to each other. They aren't talking to each other. They can't sit down. And until you understand, until you can get there. I mean, I saw a congressional hearing today, and they were in the congressional hearing, and I was sitting there saying to myself, hey, stupid, they don't care what you're saying. You're saying this, and yes, it's right, it's correct, and they should, and yeah, but they don't. Can't you read their faces? They're just sitting there staring at you. They're not reacting. You're not hitting any kind of emotional notes with these people because they really don't give a shit what you say. They don't think you're important because you're not talking to each other. You haven't reached that point where you can connect and you really feel what somebody else has to say is valued. They're not there. I mean, I would have just said, well, if I was a consultant, I'd say, let's put a halt to this meeting right now because we're not going anywhere. You guys just go out until you can come back and have a discussion about something. I don't want to see you in any room together. That's what I would have done with that meeting. I would have just stopped it right there. Hopefully that would have scared the hell out of all of them, but I couldn't see any more purpose. I mean, it's like 3 hours of people bitching at each other. And nothing was happening. Nothing was changing. And it's going to be the same way the next time. And if you go out and talk to them in the hallway and they go, well, we think we had a productive meeting. Well, no, you didn't. You didn't have any kind of a meeting. Okay? So therein lies our dilemma with the government. And not just the government, but it's affecting a lot of us out here too from that standpoint. So clear communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity. But absent feedback, which is part of that communication process, you're not going to have that clarity. You will have the confusion. That's what we got. Active listening and observation. Use the EI techniques, the emotional intelligence discussed in the newsletter. We'll continually discuss throughout the newsletter and during the Q&A sessions. We're going to work on this a whole lot. Watch for the recipient's reactions. Are they engaged? Are they retreating from you? That's what I was saying about this meeting. I would have just stopped it. They were not taking the feedback from each other. They were not taking it wasn't changing anything. There was no purpose to the discussions. Just stop it. Stop it right now. Go back to your rooms and think about yourself, because you were getting nothing done. And blaming the other person isn't going to get it done either. Okay? You got to sit down and say, what's going to happen if we don't come together and solve this? I'm really not excited about what I think is going to happen, because one side isn't listening to all, the other side's frustrating because they're not listening, but the one side has all the power, the other one doesn't. I mean, this is the most unbalanced, least trustful environment I've ever seen in my whole life, let alone my career. And I can tell you, if you don't figure this out, I know how it ends. It ends like a lot of those other third world countries. Somebody's picking up a rifle on both sides, and they're going to go fight it out until somebody wins. Okay? And it may not be as easy as you think it is if you have all the power, because there are people who have been fighting guerrilla warfare for decades, hundreds of years. If you go into Southeast Asia, it's still not done. They're still fighting it out in Cambodia and Thailand. So I'm just saying to you, this is a really heightened, the Congress and our government and what's going on in America today is a heightened example of what happens when you're not communicating and you're not understanding how to read the feedback that's coming your way. So just that kind of point. Collaboration, I'd love to, I'm not going to even use the government as collaboration, but I have been in organizations where there was this kind of battle going on inside of a department, a little less critical and a little less dangerous, but same kind of fighting, infighting, and battling. And when we broke it down and got people educated about this and then coming back and looking at it differently, I've seen them move from a confusing, non-communicative state into a highly collaborated, synchronized, energized team. Synergy is not bad, ladies and gentlemen. Compromise is probably necessary at times, but it's bad. It's a lose-lose environment. Everybody gives up something. Synergy is when you collaborate to the point where whatever you come up with is better than any of those other decisions you would have made individually separated. And that's what you should strive for, synergy. Collaboration is what you should do it. Feedback's critical to collaboration, so you continually understand where you are and where you need to go in your communication process. I'm going longer than I should have gone on this, but this is important, and nobody's asking questions. So, and I'm live on YouTube, but I'm not. It's unlisted live, so only subscribers would be here. If I had subscribers, maybe they'd be asking me some questions about this. Maybe enlighten you a little bit about how you ought to be looking about all these podcasts that are going on out there about this. How much are they really solving the problem? Summary of effective feedback. Don't wait for the annual reviews. Provide the feedback in real time as it's going on. That's what wasn't happening in that congressional hearing today. Balance, acknowledge strengths while addressing the areas of growth, and being able to understand what are some of the strengths of some of these other people that are going on. Is everybody just so totally rotten? That's it? Is there a reason why they feel the way they feel like this? I'd really like to know what their reasons are. I don't agree with them, and yes, I think what they're doing is horrible. But I'd like to know why they think it's okay. Why does you feel like it's good to go into a city and create hell? Suppose we came into your house and started creating hell. What would you do about it? You'd probably start fighting back. Well, get ready. Consistency. Make feedback a cultural norm, not a rare occurrence. Understand, every time you're having a conversation, feedback's involved. You just don't know how to use it as effectively as you could. Reading the nonverbal cues effectively, paying attention to the language, getting the sense of where people's emotions were, being able to synchronize with them, and being able to help regulate them to going in the right direction. The more you can do that with somebody, the more they perceive you value who they are. You're taking the time to do that kind of stuff. So by mastering these steps, you're going to transform feedback from a leadership pain point, which, boy, it is a pain point today, into a competitive advantage. We could be the best country in the whole wide world. In fact, we were doing pretty good heading that direction until recently. But evidently, what we missed, here's the point, what we missed is we weren't paying attention to feedback from the people out in the country while Joe Biden was doing a great job of putting together legislation, putting programs into place, building roads, and all the stuff that we really needed to be doing in this country to be good. He still didn't hear or notice or take the feedback from the people. And I've heard this said several times, and people saying in off ways, but they haven't paid enough attention to addressing that specific thing. We miss the feedback of the people. We missed finding out what they were really mad about. Why? And we didn't discuss it with them on top of that. Because we missed it, we didn't take an opportunity to continue the dialogue and discuss it to reach that level that said, why would you want to change what we're doing? I mean, we're heading in the right direction. Why would you want to change that? They had a reason. We just didn't hear it. And I'm not sure we still know it today because we're still not listening to them. So mastering the art of dialogue requires both mind and heart. It requires emotions, the ability to read and define emotions, while at the same time trying to ascertain what you need to do to regulate that behavior to go in the right direction. Now, if you have any questions, so I find that interesting because, let me come up here. There are a couple questions here that came. Let me go get them here, and I need to take this slide down here, and then I think I have this up. No, that's not the right one. Somewhere I have, I think it's in here. Well, Well, I'm having a hard time finding those questions right now. Okay, wait a minute. There they are. I found them. Let me take this one and type it in and then we'll cut this off here as soon as I answer a couple of these questions. So, because it take time to wrote them, so I thought it'd be nice to have them. Let's put these. Let me go to my let's see, chat section here. There we go. I have this essential shaking you get when you're older, and it's hell when you're trying to do your own producing. So let me, I think this is up here, so I can take that out of there, and let's see if I can push this in here. And then, let's see. There we go. That went into there, so I can click on this. There, come up. There you go. It worked. Yay! That's something I have absolutely no idea what the hell I just did. So, some of those you think about when you're doing this stuff. But here's a young lady by name Cynthia. She wrote my email. I don't know much about Cynthia or where she comes from or any of that. But during a feedback class with my instructor, now I am sensing from the gist I read on the email that she might have been a student. My instructor said it was important to repeat feedback words so the person knows you're paying attention. How often should you do that? About every other word would really let them know you're paying real close attention, right? No, not right. This is where you need to, Cynthia, you need to take some time and you need to go back and learn a little bit about feedback. This session we had here, go back and watch it again. Okay, because I spent a lot of time. I spent an hour doing this presentation. But feedback is more. Communication is more. In fact, if you go back to the original video I did, there was a 4.5 minute, what I call communication primer. Exactly what happens when two people talk to each other, just so you could see everything that transpires in that process. It's a model. From the time you decide what message you're trying to put together, what you have to consider when you're putting that message together relative to who you're sending it to, all of the things that can go wrong with it, all the things that are being looked at while you're sending the message. How do you send it? Do you do it by phone? Do you do it by text message? Do you just leave a sticky note? Do you do it through video conferencing, or do you do it face-to-face? Where you're having coffee across the table in the cafeteria or at a break area. Whatever that is, all of that process, you need to understand first what's really going on when two people are talking to each other. And then you can begin to take that microcosm and move it into a macro world. Just think about what happens when you have governments talking to each other. What happens when you have businesses talking to each other. But start with that. Learn what's going on when two people are talking to each other. And then part of that is when I say nonverbal communication is important, the ability to read nonverbal communication. That means you have to see somebody and you have to hear them at the same time. Now, if you were sitting across from me, I think, I don't know if I have, no, I don't have it set up here where I have somebody else. If it were you and I talking kind of like you see on podcasts, when you see those people talking in podcasts, they're having as close as you can get to a good interpersonal discussion on social media. But they're still missing a whole lot. It's not like if I had you right across the table from me and we were talking about this subject and you said something and I then questioned what you said and I began to probe that question, you begin to respond, and I could see the anger coming up in your responses to me. You were not liking what I was saying to you. Then from a feedback perspective, I would sense that while you're doing this. Now if you go to my Building Renaissance Leadership channel that this is on right here, and you find there is a video on there about neuroscience and communication, interpersonal communication. It's about an hour and a half long, but I go into detail about all the aspects of what's going on in your brain and why knowing that is important for you to understand how come interpersonal communication is so powerful, that people believe how you are reacting when you're saying it more than they do the actual words you're saying. So if I said yes, vast majority of people would say no. And now some would say yes, but the vast majority of people would say no. And I did that for years and years in team building sessions. So I've had thousands of these people, and I can tell you over 80% of them, they say 90, 95%. I'd say about 70, 85% are going to believe in nonverbal based on my little test there, my informal research project, over thousands of people. But the key is they're going to believe you by shaking my head more than I said yes. And that's something you need to understand why that's happening. And it's happening because if you listen to that, and I also presented this, I think, in the second video. I put a video in the second one of these question and answer sessions you need to watch between Dr. Shores and Dr. Huberman. And they were talking about, and Dr. Shores is a psychologist, and I think he's a psychiatrist, and he specializes in therapy, but he's also a neuroscientist, and he is basically said that really what you have is two sympathetic nervous systems talking to each other when your eyes are connecting. And so your whole body is reacting. That's how you can get into the other person's, you can really begin to understand how they're feeling, because your eyes are the only two organs outside of your cranial that are actually attached directly to the brain. The rest of them, everything else is connected through nerves and other parts of your body system that go into your nervous system. But the eyes are directly connected. They're going directly from brain to brain. That's as close as you're going to get to perceiving what somebody is thinking without knowing them telling you that. So they discovered this through MRI and technology. So learn about these things. Learn how they operate, why they operate. Practice them. Buy my books, sell my project here. Buy my books, read my books, work through the workbooks, find a couple of TV shows that have emotion involved in them, like Landman or the one about firemen. Or look at those points where the people are interacting with each other and learn to identify when they are effectively providing good feedback and what's involved in it, and when they're not, and why they're not, and what happens when they don't, etc. You're going to kind of see those shows mimic real life quite closely. They're really good ways to play with this and practice it. Now, I used to sit at bars. I used to go sit at a bar. There were a couple of bars I favored in my lifetime, and when I was sitting at a bar, I just sat there and had a couple of drinks, and I watched people. I watched how they interacted, how they met each other. When somebody wasn't really interested, that person came up and started talking to, they weren't really interested. How that transpired, how they got out of that scenario. All of those things are available for you to observe and see and practice. You have to have what the workbooks do is they give you kind of a model, a tool to do that with. And I suggest you do that because you can't just read the book and understand feedback. You can't read about emotional intelligence and understand emotional intelligence. You got to go play with it and look at it. So that's my answer, Cynthia. You got a lot more work to do than what your instructor told you from there. So let's see if I can, how we get out of that now. There we go. Yeah. All right. So now I see how that works in case somebody starts asking questions. And then I had one more here from a guy by the name of Michael. I sense Michael might be a leader or he might be in the field of leadership development or something like that. But let's put it on here. Paste. Let me get it up there. Put this one up. Michael says, I don't see my leader very often, and they leave instructions through, okay, so he's talking about his leader. That's where I got it. So leave instructions through short text messages, and many times they're not, they are incomplete, or I have questions. How should I handle that? This is why, Michael, this is why I tell people in organizations that they need to take this kind of training down all the way to employees, because your question is extremely relevant and often doesn't get answered. And that is, how can I learn how to handle talking with my boss? So there's a lot of things you need to know about how to do that. And we're going to be talking about a lot of these things. So one of the things I would do is subscribe to this podcast or subscribe to this newsletter. Go back and read some of the previous newsletters, watch the videos, do it a couple times. Watch them and then come back a week or two later and watch them again. You're going to pick up something different every time you watch them. That's how the brain works. Then begin to learn about the same principles that I am telling a leader needs to learn in order to connect with employees so that they feel valued. The leader will have the same, you'll have the same effect if you think of yourself as a leader and your boss is an employee. How would you approach that? How would you make him feel valued? So one way to do that, and this is a trick that I haven't brought out yet, but it's called reciprocity. One of them is just going out and telling your boss the problem. Just say, have you got some time that we're not going to be interrupted and I can talk to you? It's nothing serious. I just need some help. Try that. And you're going to find out your boss is going to step back a minute for a second and go, oh, okay, opportunity for me to help. They probably want the help. They just don't know how in a lot of cases. So when they come in, you need to do what we said earlier. You need to prep your meeting before you go in, and you need to think about how you think your boss is going to react to it the best you can. And have that purpose all lined out. And the purpose is you want him to grasp the idea that you need him to spend more time with you. And formulate some questions and some discussion points around that. And then make sure you're in a place where it's quiet and where he isn't sitting behind a desk, where you guys can maybe have coffee someplace in a coffee house somewhere and just sit down, and all of that takes a lot of tension out of the discussion and lets you focus on hey, I need some help because I'm having a real hard time getting the messages that you're trying to send to me. And here's what's kind of happening. I need discussion. I need to be able to ask questions back. You might be assuming I know more than I know. I don't know. But I need for us to talk like that until we both feel comfortable that when you say something, I know pretty much what you're talking about and I can go out and complete it. And at that point, yes, we don't need as much. But until then, I need some interaction with you to get a sense of where you are and what you're saying. And you're going to be surprised at how many leaders, as tough as they are, some of the hardest, toughest leaders I've seen, they soften up and they listen and they go, okay, I see. And they do that. They make that accommodation. So when I'm talking about this program, I'm talking about everything I'm saying in these newsletters for as long as I'm going to do them, I guess. I don't know how long that's going to be. But everything I wrote in those books was not aimed at just leaders. It's aimed at anybody who is trying to develop a good connection between them and the person they're interacting with. So this information is just as much for employees, just as much for families who are trying to relate to each other, just as much for friends who are trying to be kind and develop relations that are supportive of each other. All of these people will benefit from these discussions, will benefit from this Substack if they would just come join us. The absence of them means they're not getting the feedback. So there you go, Michael. That's how I would do that. Grab, same thing. Start learning this information. Jump in and start participating with us. Don't be afraid to get on here and ask questions, or come join me on the air and ask a question. We can do that too. Okay, so we pretty much blown the hell out of an hour and 18 minutes, I think. I hope some people are going to get to start listening and seeing these videos. They are private. They are not on YouTube. They're not public on YouTube. You got to subscribe in here. I got to know you're interested and want to see it before I'm going to share it. Okay, so it's not one of those things where you can decide not to commit and not to participate with us and think you're going to get something and then go run with it, because you won't get the same thing out of it, because you're not going to get the dialogue that I just had with Michael and Cynthia, I think it was. That's what we need. We need that kind of stuff. Okay. Now again, you can email me at vvogel@victorlvogel.com, and you can email me your question. I'll put it up just like I did with Cynthia and Michael, and if we have time. I mean, what I really like for you to do is come on the air with us and follow us and get interested in making your communication a lot more effective. We need a lot of people out there doing a lot better than they are doing now. If I ask all the country, out of anything you could get your representatives to do better, what would it be? It'd probably be communication. We go through that same scenario of defining that, and that's what we're doing here. We're teaching interpersonal communication, not like a professor is going to teach it to you. This is the way we do it in the real world. Not that professors don't. They do good jobs of it. They without their knowledge generation, we wouldn't be where we are now. I wouldn't be able to talk to you the way I'm explain now. But there is some realism to going out and putting practicality to it, to make it an exciting part of growing and energizing. And in my opinion, we should put interpersonal communication, as I defined it, emotional intelligence and the communication process reach an intersection. The book I have is called Navigating Conversations, where emotional intelligence intersects with communication mastery, where those two things, where you master the concept of what's going on in the discussion and you are able to tie emotional intelligence into that, then you've got effective interpersonal communication. Okay? All right. Next week, like I told you, we're going to have micromanagement and its impact on autonomy. As you might imagine, it has a lot to do with what we're talking about here, and a lot to do with the two previous segments of vagueness and transparency and feedback. If you go back and refresh your memory with these videos and read these newsletters, none of this is excessively long. None of it's excessively long, but it's packed with a lot of information. You're going to have to read it more than one time to grasp it. You're going to pick something up every time you read it a second, third, or fourth time. You're going to pick something different up. Something's going to strike you about what you saw, what you did, what you observed throughout the week or day or whatever, and it's going to click. And when you can identify it and say, yeah, I should have done this, then you're on the track to improving. Then you're on the track to really transferring what you learn into real action and behavior out there. And there's so much more to communication than people even remotely understand. So hopefully we can get it to a point where people want to start talking to each other again and stop texting each other, because texting and social media are a destructive element. They're acid. I mean, you're going to have great communication, you pour social media on it, and it starts eating away at great communication till there's none left. It's a sad thing to say, because if we could figure out how, instead of destroying interpersonal communication, how to enhance it through technology, truly get some of these component issues of it engaged through a technology process, then we could possibly reach so many more people, which is the benefit of social media. We could reach so many more people and do so much more. But we're not doing it this way. We're not doing it when more people are wanting to watch people bitch about what's going on in America than are wanting to come in and learn how to talk to each other in a way that creates a connection and trust. It's almost ironic for me to understand this and watch what's going on. It's frustrating, but it's also ironic. It's unbelievable. You have a great day. I'll see you next Thursday night at 8 p.m. And Tuesday morning, you have another newsletter coming out, 7 a.m. Look for it. And start getting people to subscribe here. I mean, push some folks this way, and maybe we could get some interesting discussions going on. We wouldn't have to listen to me talk so much. We'd be talking about it versus me talking at you about it. And I have no idea how you're feeling about it because I can't see you. You won't come see me. All right. See you later. Have a good day.